what we'll do is we'll start now looking into understanding anxiety, especially anxiety and overthinking, but we'll more focus on anxiety because overthinking tend to be sometimes a symptom of anxiety. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Thank you, thank you, Gracie. It's nice for you to say that. So yeah, so one of the things that you will see that even one of the things that we've learned over the years is that a lot of people are actually going through anxiety right now. About 1 in 5 people, so that's about 20 people going through anxiety. So this is not anxiety disorder, generalized anxiety disorder. These are people who are experiencing anxiety in the short term, but there has been a huge increase. So if you're feeling like you're the only one who's going through anxiety, overthinking, this is not the case. There's a lot of people who are going through these issues right now. Okay, so it's usually, especially when it comes to anxiety, it is actually to deal with a lot of excessive worrying and fear and then nervousness, right? So there's unnecessary amount of that, and then we'll talk about what are some of the origins of it, what are the things that you can do about it, and it essentially be able to treat it effectively. So there are ways to, based on the current research and in development in psychology, there are actual ways that we can deal with that issue much more effectively. So we'll talk a little bit about that. So one of the main things that even when I'm counseling people, many people think when they experience anxiety, there's actually something wrong with them. But what you realize is that actually anxiety is not, there's no flaw within you. It is actually a protective strategy or a protective mechanism that was inbuilt in order to prevent future fears or anxieties. So we'll talk a little bit more about that when we're talking about the subconscious mind. But one of the main things I've seen when I'm counseling my clients is that many of them think they internalize it. They put it as something that's wrong with them. And one of the first things we tell them is like, that's not the case. It's nothing wrong with you. It's just anxiety is a byproduct of, essentially a defense mechanism or protective mechanisms that get initiated when stress or overwhelm become too much, more than you can essentially have the skills right now to handle it, okay? So again, and another thing to remember about anxiety is that it is a learned pattern, right? So it's a response to a situation. So when we learn how to respond to the situation a little bit better, that automatic patterns that come from the anxiety started to get nullified. So we'll talk a little bit more about that in the proven tools sections as well. So what is anxiety? So anxiety is essentially, aspect of it include overthinking, right? You're continually looping in the same type of thoughts, that affects you negatively all the time. You either have racing thoughts, restlessness, increased heart rate, sweating, difficulty concentrating. And one of the things, if you're especially going through a situation like a performance anxiety, when there's blanking out, could be also possible when there's an exam or presentation. So we'll talk a little bit about why that happens, but sometimes that can be due to either things like performance anxiety. So anxiety comes in many different forms. So one of the biggest ones I've seen that people have is usually to do with performance anxiety and social anxiety. And that's either related to either academic work or presentations or just being around other people. So it can manifest in different ways for different people. And then one of the main things also, there's feeling of sense of dread and danger associated with that as well. There's a overreaction in the nervous system. We will talk about some of the ways you can calm down the nervous system as well. We'll see things like even like self-criticism sometimes can increase our nervous system activity and the amygdala activity. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. But understand the symptoms for now, because you can see when you started to pay attention to symptoms, you started to actually experience less anxiety. It's actually something called psychoeducation. The more you understand about a situation or anxiety or disorder, as long as you're willing to go solve it, it can help you. Just learning it help you deal with it much better. This is especially important for psychological challenges. The more you understand it, usually it helps you get better. And also there's constant situation where when you have anxiety, you tend to avoid fearful situations. Usually what happens when you avoid fearful situation, anxiety tend to increase rather than decrease. So that's one of the main treatments for anxiety is exposure therapy. So we'll talk more about that as well. There's easier ways to how to deal with it. And there's things like procrastination, and then things like compulsive checking can be a common sign as well. So just to, this is not to essentially label you or anything like that, just to understand, okay, how does the anxiety actually does it show up? And as we talked about before, anxiety for a lot of people, it's a signal that needs your attention, right? So it's not a necessarily a pathology or condition. It's almost like, check signal light, check engine light on your car. Your anxiety is kind of saying, oh, there's something you need to take a look at in order to deal with. So exactly what we're talking about, anxiety is not enemy, it's a signal. It's essentially a messenger, not a threat. Sometimes people can get anxiety about the fact that they have anxiety, and that essentially just escalates it. But to remember is that keep being compassionate to understanding anxiety is not harming, it's just a signal that is coming up for you to take a look at, is actually a first step of understanding in the right way. And then you will see that fighting against it usually keeps it alive, keeps it going. So when you try to fight against anxiety, it usually becomes more and more. The best way we found is that learning how to understand it, not blaming yourself. That's one of the big one, right? So understanding means that it is actually a physiological response that happens and it's normal. And we'll also talk about something called amygdala hijacking to help you make it more sense for you. But just understanding in the proper light can help you a lot in terms of dealing with anxiety in the future. Okay, so just remember that anxiety is in nothing wrong with you. It's essentially saying there's something for you to be taking a look at inside with with your beliefs, with your emotions, or the habits that you're taking on. Okay, so feel free to ask me any questions if it comes up. So GIC said there's a message. Can't wait to hear more. Sorry, yeah, perfect. Yeah, we'll talk more about it. If you're interested a little bit about my background after our session. Yes, you will get the copy. You will get the slide deck as well. Perfect. At the end of the session. Okay, perfect. So I think one of the most important things that I want to actually teach people about or educate people about is this aspect of known as amygdala hijacking. Again, I don't have all, I didn't spend a lot of, slides on this one, but this is actually, I would say, for you to take a look at and read about on your own time, because it can shed light into why a lot of people are going through anxiety. Usually, amygdala hijacking, just in terms of understanding, is known as essentially there's a part of the brain known as amygdala, which is responsible for your threat detection, right? Whether you're in danger or not. What happened during anxiety, this part of the brain becomes overreactive, right? Usually when you're going through, fear of when you're experiencing, failure, rejection, judgment, fear of loss, right? Even things like self-criticism, comparing yourself to others, perfectionism, all these things can essentially give you anxiety because it keeps you in a more a threat-like state. So even watching news, sometimes when you're getting angry with people or upset with politicians or whoever, right? What it does is that it keeps your amygdala overactive, right? So when the amygdala stays overactive, it leads to anxiety. And a lot of, again, this is not something I knew for a long time. When I used to work in the corporate world, I used to get upset with my bosses all the time and say things, and I didn't know it was actually affecting my own mental health. Because when you think negatively, when you think about negatively, especially about yourself, when you compare, or even when you think negatively about others, it can increase. It increases the chance of your amygdala, which is your threat detection system in your brain, becomes overactivated, right? So I know this is a little bit more from the neuroscience aspect of it. Don't know how many people actually understand or come across this concept before, but it is something I've noticed that especially high achievers or people who are already professionals, they go through sometimes blanking out state where they experience a lot of anxiety for a short period of time, and they actually don't know it's because of this situation, where they're temporarily going through excessive amount of stress, where now your threat detection system is overactivated. Now everything is seen as a threat or attack, right? So so we'll talk a lot more about that, like how do you actually calm the system down. But just understand, usually I've noticed, especially when it comes to me, when you have conflict with other people, when you're watching a lot of news, it can activate it during those times. So something for you to keep an eye on. And it makes you feel like you're anxious all the time as a byproduct of that. Okay, so do a little bit of research when you get a chance about amygdala hijacking on your own. I think it will shed some light to you the reasons for anxiety. Okay, so love to hear a little bit. Has anyone else have come across that concept, um, or is it something new? Everybody's probably have, but that's okay. But so understand this. Read a little bit more about this because it is something that can affect your anxiety on the long run, and eventually, anxiety usually, if it stays too long, to depression and things like that, right? So keep an eye on that. And another big thing, I think, this understanding kind of took me a long time to kind of build my own understanding around it. It's just the relationship between our subconscious mind and anxiety. I know this is usually, this is not really usually even, I would say, covered too much in university program, but it is something that me reading Buddhism, different subject matter about this mind that I've discovered is that our mind has about three levels, right? So when it comes to our emotions and memories, habits, automatic thinking, right, they come from the subconscious mind, right? And the subconscious mind always have a lot of ability, a lot of skills. You can train it to drive your car, right? Do your work. It has a lot of abilities, and you can program it. But sometimes when it gets programmed the wrong way, right? Like being fearful about situations we don't need to be fearful of, it can become a pattern, right? So understand that a lot of our anxiety, especially our fears, negative things sometimes, negative thinking. What I mean by negative thinking is like unuseful thinking patterns about ourselves. Usually are part of our subconscious mind, right? That is coming from the past, usually through past experiences, what we learn from our culture, from TV, um, from our society, school, right? So that can influence how our subconscious mind is working and what type of thoughts and thinking that is stored in there. Okay, so just see if you can understand this one. So the middle part is the conscious mind, right? Conscious mind is what's essentially responsible for your decision making, problem solving, your level of awareness, your level of focus and attention. All right. So if if that aspect you want to develop, this is essentially, this aspect that known as the conscious mind, you can essentially develop using, you know, developing even, problem solving, like working and, math, right? Even gaming, these things increase your conscious mind. But in terms of understanding the anxiety aspect, it's coming from having maladaptive thinking patterns or traumatic memories that are stored in the subconscious mind that needs to be expressed or seen and dealt with and let go of if once you choose to. Okay, so this for me personally, not knowing how the subconscious mind work made me it was I feel like I didn't know how to control my mind, how to do anything, to be honest, when I was going through anxiety. But when I realized the sources of my anxiety is coming from my subconscious mind because of my past beliefs, my past emotion, and how I responded to situation, I started to realize, oh, look, I can change and make different type of responses to my situations based on whether it's useful for me or not, right? So we'll talk about how there's this model called T-Bear, which I'm writing about. I was writing on about one of my books. So let me know if there's any questions about this model, right? So understand the subconscious mind is infinitely powerful as well. So it has the ability to learn and understand many things. And then, I mean, this session, usually in the anxiety session, workshop, I don't usually talk about the superconscious mind too much, but it's essentially understanding that there's aspect of your mind that has infinite intelligence, creative power, and usually that aspect is activated when you're in calm or meditative states, or when you're overall feeling really good. But the idea is essentially understand some of the behaviors you're having, patterns and behaviors and thinking patterns, especially coming from the past, from the subconscious mind. But when you slowly uncover them and decide to let go of them, you can essentially change how your subconscious mind work. And that's important to know. So the subconscious mind and overthinking and repetitive thinking, it usually goes hand in hand. Is something to pay attention to when you're learning about this stuff as well. Okay. So please let me know if there's any questions about any of this. Okay, so one of the key models there, this is one of the models that I started to write in my book. My book is called Burnout is Not Your Fault. One of the biggest problems I started to see, even when I was learning psychotherapy, even when I was learning overall just psychology about the mind, there's no easy way to like wrap my mind around my mind, right? So no real way. Okay, what is the nature of the mind? How does it work? So I started to in order to going through so many different material over the research for the last 6 7 years. I started to kind of build a model of the mind so that I can make sense of how it's working and what it's doing and so forth. So one of the main things I realize is that the mind can be essentially divided into five main sections, right? So there is thoughts, right? Thoughts are essentially the information that you're thinking about, or even like the stuff that you're hearing from this session. So thoughts and beliefs are different because beliefs something are something that you hold on to, something that is part of you, that's part of your identity, or that's part of your own belief system, right? So there's thoughts, and then there's beliefs, and then there's emotions. And emotions essentially emotions like fear, sadness, happiness, anger, right? So these type of emotions are part of the mind as well. And also there's action. So what are your habits, right? So you will see that obviously your mind controls the certain set of habits that especially that have been programmed from the past, right? So actions or habits are one of the components as well. And the other one is the results. So results that you actually gain from taking specific action. So I kind of put them into one model of the mind known as the T-Bear, which is thoughts, beliefs, emotions, actions, and results. So you will see that these five things tend to work really, interrelated to each other. They work in close with each other, right? So in order to control, in order to let go of a specific beliefs, you need to let go of specific thoughts that are associated with that, right? So you'll see that sometimes your actions will kick in, and the emotions will kick in, and the belief will kick in after that, right? So you'll see that they're not one way, but they instruct each other from all sides. Okay, that's important to understand. But once you learn how to select which beliefs, which thought systems that you want to associate yourself with, you can choose to let go of the ones you don't. But we'll talk a little bit more about that when we're talking about the proven tools and techniques as well. But the idea is to understand that your mind is heavily governed by, societal thinking of your family, your friends, your school, your work, your culture. So a lot of it have become part of your mind and has become subconscious in nature. So some of those beliefs and ways of thinking might be helpful. Some of them might not be helpful. So our job is to figure out, okay, what are the useful belief systems, useful thought systems that we can learn, and then essentially use that to get the results we want in life, right? So essentially, that's important to understand. That's in this nature of the mind, because it can help you kind of build a framework of why are you even doing all this work, why I even I'm continually repeating some of the things you need to know, because repetition is actually one of the true properties of the mind. So you'll see that in the sessions, like I generally repeat the most important things I think you need to find you would find useful, so it helps you to remember them better. Okay. So the key thing to understand here is that understand that thoughts, emotions, and actions are related to one another and can influence one another very closely. Okay. So let me know if there's any questions in the meantime. Okay. So one of the main tools, so you'll see that next slide actually uses this graphic a lot, right? You'll see that the thoughts, beliefs, emotions, actions, reality. So there's a technique known as reframing your thoughts or reframing your thinking. So this is essentially what you're doing is you're picking and choosing type belief systems or thought systems that will serve you, that will be helpful to you. You realize that general population, right? Overall, normally people uh, think unhelpful or negative thoughts about usually about 20% of the time if they have no clinical issue, right? But what happens that during burnout or when you're going through excessive uh, anxiety, right, the unhelpful thinking patterns can rise up to 50 to 70% of your total thoughts during a day, right? So being able to pay attention to, okay, what are these self-critical loops, or what are these negative thinking patterns or catastrophic thinking patterns, is actually becomes one of your key steps in order to understand how do you actually deal with your anxiety, because you will see that a lot of anxiety comes from uh, maladaptive or not so useful thinking patterns. But when they become beliefs, they become part of our nervous systems that we need to essentially do certain work in order to deal with the nervous system challenges, right? But the idea to in this slide to understand that a lot of our negative thinking, oh sorry, a lot of our anxiety is actually coming from not so useful thinking. I don't like to call it negative thinking because people are allowed to think however they want, but certain patterns of thinking, if they're not helpful for them, if it's not benefiting in their life in any way, then that's what I consider to be unhelpful thinking. And unhelpful thinking tend to obviously it seems to have also negative effect on certain emotions that you experience, right? So that's essential to understand, to being curious about, hey, like what are these, what are the helpful ways of thinking, what are the unhelpful ways of thinking, and what am I actually thinking throughout the day. So being able to pay attention to that itself will start to help you overcome, because when you started to be mindful, or this is also known as being able to pay attention to your own thoughts, your emotions, your behavior, is known as metacognitive training. When you're even just doing metacognitive training, just paying attention to your own thoughts, your emotions, you're automatically becoming more self-aware and then reducing your anxiety over time, um, in to begin with. So do it step by step. You don't need to rush these things, right? It's just for you to know, what one of the techniques that can be very useful for you to try out. Okay. So any questions so far?
You said that unhelpful thinking
Yeah.
is kind of a cause for the anxiety, and because we kind of start believing in it, correct?
Yes. Yes,
And
that's right.
believing in something is kind of a part of subconscious mind. And if the unhelpful thinking is kind of increasing to 50 to 70%, why it is affecting the subconscious mind? It should be other way around, right? Like subconscious mind affecting the conscious,
Right.
or it's like if same thing happens for months or years, then the conscious mind will affect subconscious. It's like that.
So so Riju, so from what I've learned, it actually during early years when we were children, right? We Our subconscious minds are not fully developed yet. So basically, all types of information, ways of being, habits get exposed to us when we were children, right? Then over time, when we're becoming more and more aware, then it started to affect our our conscious mind more, because as we are becoming more aware, as we increase in our age, we tend to become more conscious, and then started to become aware of the thoughts and the beliefs that we're going through. Is that what you mean?
Yes. So the anxiety is directly linked to both conscious and subconscious.
Absolutely, because in the subconscious, it feels like nervous system issues, like never the subconscious communicate through like emotional responses, like anxiety itself, or trembling, sweating, a rising heart rate. So subconscious communicates to you that way.
Oh, okay.
You know what I mean? So the conscious is now, like when you're learning about it, you're now making the anxiety concept itself more conscious. So the power anxiety has on your subconscious slowly reduces, because when you can like see something and being able to deal with it, it reduces the extra, what you call, pressure that was put on the subconscious, thinking, hey, I can't deal with this issue, I don't know what's happening. It's saying, I can deal with this, I can figure out a solution for it. Any issue will automatically reduce your anxiety. But when it's stuck in your subconscious, when it cannot be seen, and you don't even know why you got hurt at that time, that you're holding on to that. If it cannot be seen, that's usually what leads to overall anxiety being manifested, or any other symptoms related to that.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
That
Yeah.
answers my question. Thank you.
Thank you, Raju. Thank you for your questions. I really appreciate it. Okay, good question, by the way. So I understand that a lot of our challenges like, especially if you have gone through a really tough childhood, or gone through a lot of difficult periods in your life, your subconscious might later on, be more protective of you naturally, in order to prevent you from going through more harm. So that's why that aspect of compassion is so valuable. Understanding your anxiety is so valuable. When you start to understand, it's almost started to become more softer in nature. But if you started to blame yourself and talk to yourself negatively, call yourself stupid, or I can't do it, or I'm not good at it, that just unnecessarily increase your anxiety, because if you have overcome issues in the past, very likely that you'll be able to overcome issues in the future as well. But believing that, it becomes issue. So when you believe negative beliefs about yourself, it usually becomes more of a problem. Okay. So let me know if there's any questions. It might be for some, it might be new to you, kind of, dealing with these type of thoughts, paying attention to the mind. So feel free to ask any questions you have. So I see. So there's an aspect of how do you do the reframing? Because you might be wondering, okay, I know I'm thinking not so helpful thoughts. So how do I start to think more helpfully, right? So this is one of the reasons I created this table. Hopefully, it's large enough. Um, so you might say, if I feel anxious, something must be wrong, right? Sometimes people kind of take it, blame themselves. And kind of reminder for yourself is that anxiety is a normal stress response. There's no a sign of danger, right? Again, for different people, different reframes might work. Not all of them would work at all the time as well. So see what it is that the idea of it, and how the compassionate talk reframe that you need to apply, right? So you might think, when you have a situation like, like doing a presentation, right? Oh, I can't handle this, right? I might not be good. So you can say, I don't like this feeling, but I've handled and dealt with hard things, or challenging things in the past or before. right? So you can remind yourself, so things like that. And if and you might have you might say, hey, what if I mess up? Understanding mistakes are uncomfortable. No, it's not catastrophic, and recover, right? So without making mistakes, it's hard for anyone to grow, absolutely, right? So again, but when we get older, these things can come to your more surface, especially things that was in our subconscious, right, that we haven't not dealt with in our teens and 30s and 20s, right? So they can sometimes show up when we're becoming adult, these underlying subconscious patterns. But like I reminded before, the key thing is once you find an unuseful way of thinking or a reframe or a belief pattern, your job is to essentially make a decision, say, hey, this way of looking at myself and others is not serving me, especially when I know it can have an effect on my emotions, effect on my actions, effects on my results. Why am I holding on to believing this when it doesn't serve me? Because for me, I really didn't know, like thinking negatively about myself, comparing myself with other people, blaming or judging other people. I really didn't know it was affecting my own mental health. I thought like, oh, we're free to do that. But what I learned over the years, you're free to think whatever you want to think, but you're not free from the consequences necessarily. So, which is a hard lesson, because like then I need to be always watch what I watch what I think and think, watch what I do and all those things. But I realized it became less restrictive, and I realized, hey, if I want this in my life, I just need to do more of this and less of that, instead of being blinded by reality, being blinded in your own mind, in your own actions, own habits, right? Own conditions, being blinded by own anxiety. I think that was not useful to me anymore. So that's when I realized, hey, like reframing your thinking about things the different way can actually have an effect on your mental health, in your emotions, in your physical, how you take action. Especially the biggest one was for me was procrastination. The more I'd be like, hey, I'll delay it, I'll do it another time. It's in the short term, it's nice, right? But in the long term, you feel more fearful, right? So that's essentially kind of the idea is like we will talk about. I don't know if you knew about like avoid, like one of the main issues. We'll talk about that as one of the tools as well. If you avoid a specific situation, specific thing, and you plan to do it in the future, it actually builds more anxiety, right? So we'll talk more about avoidance. Avoidance, it's one of the things when somebody told me, hey, like if you avoid something that you really need to do, it builds more anxiety. Who knew? I didn't know that. So it's again a big lesson that I learned that I want to share with you as well. Okay, so kind of try to understand, how do you have a self-compassionate talk to yourself? How do you reframe during, and then how do you let go of belief systems that is no longer serving you, right? So you will see it's not a short-term solution, but it is a solution that can have a lot of results over time. Okay, so keep an eye on this reframing your thoughts thing. I'll also send you this slide deck as well. So let's take a look at next. So I mean, this is something I share with all my clients when I'm working with them. Keep a journal, right? Keeping a journal is one of the easiest way that you can see what you're thinking, what you're feeling, what are your goals are, what are your values are, right? Keep it simple. You don't need to diary or journal every day. Just journal whatever comes to your mind. Hey, I feel like this today. Oh, I would like to do this one day. Oh, I have these problems, these issues today, right? So rather than, especially for those who are overthinking, which I used to do a lot of as well, I realized the overthinking or that looping happens because that your own mind is trying to get your attention towards something, right? So when you started to write down things that are important for you, that are looping in your head, you can start seeing some patterns, whether you need to do something, right? Whether you need to pay your bill, or whether you need to go get checked out, something there's something that is keep coming. So make a list of all those things that are coming into your mind, right? And then be able to see them visibly. Again, journaling is not about diary, like you have to write every day That's too much work, right? So keep it simple. Keep it what you can have, because taking things more, little bit more lightly, because people who have anxiety, including myself before, right? I used to be very hard on myself with my activities, even keeping a journal. Oh, I have to keep a journal every day. No, be more gentle, because you have to be step by step based on what you are resonating with. So if keeping a journal is not resonating with you, don't worry about it. You don't have to do that, right? But write with right. Oh, Jonas says I like journaling each day. Me too, brother. So so I do that as well. So if it's resonating with you, go for it, right? You can honestly use like a Word doc or Google Doc or something like that as well. But be able to see what you're thinking about day to day, thinking about your values, your goals, right? So, like, I never planned to do these sessions. I never planned to actually, after I worked in the corporate world, to do psychotherapy and counseling for people. But I really like to. So I started to, when I started journaling, I just started to write them down, and now I'm doing exactly that, right? So it can help you with your goals as well. And then Jonas says, yeah, for gratitude and reframing, absolutely, reframing practice. I think there are two good ways to reprogram your subconscious mind, because many people, hey, why, like, I don't believe in affirmations. Like, I don't sometimes believe in affirmation either, up until the point I realized, hey, like, affirmations are you're reiterating that is something that is true about your own mind, right? So when you do things repetitively, that's how you reprogram your subconscious mind, right? So sometimes, repeatedly writing things reframes, right ways to look at it, writing them can be really helpful. Like, that's one of the main practices I did, is being able to physically write um, helpful prayers or affirmations. As long as you know you're doing it to slowly train your subconscious mind, it can be really helpful. Okay, so keep an eye on that. So I see some messages coming. Let's read. Oh, really? Oh, David, for me, when I first wake up, that's when things are the worst. So I get you. Love to know, like, what have you been doing to kind of deal with it, actually. So let us know if you're interested. Sometimes affirmations don't work for me that well. I prefer mantras. Oh, beautiful. Yeah. Affirmations don't always work for me. For me, it's actually one of the things that helps is just reading and studying more, because when you're reading and studying, you're kind of reinforcing the most effective things you want to know anyway. It's also known as bibliotherapy, right? Sometimes for some, reading books could be very calming activity. So see if that can be helpful. I get that anxiety. I get the anxiety can be high when you wake up. Yeah. So I ask, how can I reprogram my mind after trauma and stress? I mean, we the I can talk about the overall process associated with Dean. I mean, in terms of actually doing, you just need to be, start reseeing some of the events, right? Like, initially, it's, the first aspect of it is learning how to calm your nervous system down. Because we'll talk about actually nervous system as well, um, because nervous system, when your nervous system stays in activated mode or sympathetic mode, even when you're trying to reprogram your mind, it gets activated. So how to calm your nervous system? Aerobic exercises, swimming, sauna, right? Again, play around with things that brings calmness to your body, because if your body is not calm, or if your nervous system is not calm, whatever when you're trying to learn or do any inner work, it can trigger it, because your body is not at the place that is calm enough to accept that, right? So we can talk more about that as well, but that's essentially the initial step. Then figure out, okay, you can either work with a therapist or counselor, figure out, okay, what are the emotions that you get most triggered by. Usually the triggers tell you the trauma that you have gone through, that is hurting you in certain ways. So any hurt, any triggers that you have when you talk about certain information about your past or future, wherever it may be, pay attention to be able to come to a place that you can talk about those emotions with a counselor, or be able to see them and be able to observe them. So that's essentially becomes the next step, because if you try to do too much reprogramming right from the beginning, when you're actually hurting emotionally, that's hard. It's tough, right? So it's vital to kind of be able to have somebody to express your emotions, write them down in your journal, right? To decompress that emotion, right? Because again, emotions are almost, they're signals, they're signs, right? They're signals. But if you compress the signal, it needs to come out some form. So journaling usually is an ideal way. Working with a counselor or therapist and ideas is to be able to talk about your emotions and how you really feel, rather than you compressing them or suppressing them inside of you, so that you feel start to get affected by that. So that's not the right approach. The right approach is calm your nervous system down, then start to be able to speak about your emotions freely, without, slowly with somebody, and then do the mental programming of where you started to slowly see things from a different light or differently, or even, things like reframing, right? So there are steps required, because I tried, straight out just do reframing. Sometimes not, it doesn't always work right away. Sometimes you need to calm your mind down a little bit, calm your body down. Being able to express your emotions really will be the most useful. Okay, so we can talk more about that if you have questions. Let's see. So I get the dreads when I fake a, yeah. Same with the mornings. Yeah, mornings can be tough. Night times are too. For morning, taking minutes of exercise. Yeah, I think one of the main things that when I was, especially, as part of my program, as is where we continually searching to see most effective ways to deal with anxiety. And one of the ones that I keep coming top for both anxiety and depression, including even burnout, is exercise, especially light exercise like walking, even swimming, but walking is sometimes keep coming up to the top. So thank you, Raju, for talking about that. So it's really helpful to do that, right? Let's see, would it be best to journal in the morning when I fix so yeah, I think Trace, I think that's a good, it's for me, I realize, morning I have a lot going on in my mind when I wake up. So I try to journal in the morning, but I don't really keep a time. I will journal whenever I need it as well. So uh, you know, whenever you feel the most, you need it the most, I would say. So Jonah, let's see. Trace, I do both. Perfect, perfect. Let's see anything else. I'm fine in the morning. So then I get into a cycle. Oh yeah, it's usually the negative thinking patterns, because you'll see that there is a when you're sleeping, your conscious mind is actually not working, right? It's only the subconscious mind working. So the transition between, you started to, now when you're in between that sleep wake cycle, you started to kind of passively observe some of the things that your subconscious mind is holding on to and dealing with. So that negative thinking or negative emotions, remember, one of the things is basically your subconscious mind is dealing with that, trying finding solutions for them. That's why you're having this. And the other aspect is, hey, like that, if you're actually worried about that negative thinking in the morning, you will see that there are ways to deal with that very easily. Like, for example, one of the practices is actually a meditation called loving kindness meditation. So I'll put it here. There's a lot of videos um, on YouTube. It's basically a Buddhist meditation style, where you basically start blessing yourself and blessing others. So what happens when you keep doing this repeatedly? It becomes part of your subconscious mind. So if you have a hard time waking up, and you have a lot of negative, like rumination is happening, I will highly recommend you to try loving kindness meditation. However, whichever long, how, maybe 10 minutes, 20 minutes, try it out, give it a shot, couple of days, 3 days maybe, and see if your negative thinking alleviates. But it's usually negative thinking are the type of thinking that we allowed ourselves to think about ourselves and ourselves and others. So subconscious mind is just basically running them out, right? Just repetitively. You can change them. You can change them. Hey, I don't want to think this way anymore. But you want, the key thing is becoming aware about the way you think is the key, right? So obviously journaling can help. Okay, so let me know if there's any questions about that. I gave a recommendation as well, but also just talking about, discussing your issues with challenges with somebody who's willing to listen and give you a compassion ear can help too, right? So check out those tools and let me know if there's any questions. Oh, let's see. uh yeah, the weekends can be tough, Brian, definitely. Let's see. How do you suggest overcome physical? Yeah, how do you suggest overcoming the physical effects that anxiety may cause? Yeah, I mean, that's a good question, Eddie. There's quite a few ways, but it depends again, like, in terms of guiding somebody. I always tell, hey, start with an exercise uh, of what you enjoy, rather than think that telling other listening to other people, hey, do this is most helpful. I would say, hey, like, what are some of the exercises that can be most helpful? Yeah, I mean, it might be just even just if it aligns with your thinking, maybe meditation might be just what you need to kind of relax your body first, and then get into exercise mode, right? So usually, like that, we talked about, having a nervous system, overreactive nervous system, can be pretty tough. It can make you feel tired all the time. So something meditation and something more calming might be what's most useful, like even walking. Okay, so I that's what I would see, to see if you can help will help you out with that. But key thing for me, what helped me, start with what you do like, though, right? Whether it's walking or swimming, whatever. And, like, make a list, put out of 10, what's my favorites. Go with the ones that are 8 or 9 or 10s if you feel it. Let's see, David. So I'm on the same in the weekend, same pattern, sit by myself watching TV. Sparks. Oh, I get you. Yeah, it's tough, David. I know. It's that's why I mean, honestly, I'm running events like this to kind of get people, talking and exchanging their life, and we're kind of doing, a lot of us, believe it or not, like, more people I help, the more I see how many people are doing the same pattern, right? So I'm glad that you joined and sharing yourself with us in this way. Thank you. Okay, yeah, it can be tough. I get you. Right. So let's see. So I have a few more slides. Let's see. Keeping it. Let me see, what do I have. So yeah, so one of the biggest one I've seen, that especially when I'm counseling, professionals, even students, the biggest ones I've seen is many of them still have um, a lot of self-criticism associated in their mind, in their lives. And again, it might be coming from many different places, from childhood, from family, from the societies we were built, grew up in, and culture, right? So that can be really tough for people, if you continually been exposed to that in that part of life earlier, and then now as an adult, you're kind of continuing the same thing and criticizing yourself or comparing yourself. That's a big one. Another big one that people don't know, that when you compare yourself with somebody else, you're technically self-criticizing. And the issue with self-criticism is that it leads to anxiety, it leads to rumination, it leads to overthinking, because you're continually in a state of self-judgment, right? And again, we do this we think it's a right idea, because we think when we're growing up, being self-critical keeps us accountable. But what I found out later on in my years is that it's not useful. It's actually not. It actually increases our anxiety, our heart rate, and over time it can help in the short term, right? Long term, if you continue to make it a practice, your subconscious takes this on as a practice for itself to use against you, because you don't know, right? So this is one of the biggest one, is that that self-critical nature, that inner critic becomes part of your subconscious, and people are like, oh, I have a really hard inner critic, and I have a hard inner critic, or harsh inner critic. People don't know we over the years programmed it that way. And just as you programmed it, you can reprogram it, be more compassionate towards yourself. But again, like I said, like anxiety and even things that causes it comes as protective mechanisms. They're not there to harm you. They're not there to make your life difficult. It's just we misinterpreted it. We misinterpreted our anxiety. Okay, so that's one of the main thing to remember is that slowly learn more about self criticism. I would say the best things you can learn from my session is that get these concepts that I talk about and do your own research, either Google or ChatGPT or wherever, right? Take a look at some of the effects of self-criticism, whether it's useful to do that, and then also know the examples of them. Many of them, it's okay, conceptually, I shouldn't do self-criticism, but people also don't understand examples, right? So understand how self-criticism looks like, and then also look into what are the benefits of self-compassion, right? Self-compassion, being kind to yourself, allowing yourself to make mistakes, recognize your own difficulties that you went through in the past, currently you're going through, self-compassion, right? But we talk about anxiety and self-criticism can fuel each other if you don't watch out, right? Again, these are things that I wish I told myself, uh, um, and then have found out, right? So I hear Brandy. So is it me or others noticing sound breaking up? Can everybody hear me okay, or is it breaking up?
In my case, it's fine.
Yes, it's fine. Okay, perfect.
I'm not
Carla,
sure about others though.
not sure about others. Okay, thank you, Raju. I think okay, perfect, perfect. I saw already a hand going up as well. Maybe it's a thumbs up. Either way, that's okay. Okay, you can hear me. Perfect. Okay, so perfect, Carla. Thank you. So yeah, the idea essentially just again, these are not, again, you don't need to do all these in a day. You don't need to do it like starting immediately. Start paying attention in like how much as a percentage do you have self-critical thinking towards yourself or to your children or anyone else versus compassionate, and then looking to see what are the effects of self-compassion and self-criticism. You'll see that people who are more compassionate have more performance, lesser anxiety, lesser depression, because their inner talk is positive. And it's one of the things that I've actually researched as well for one of my papers. One of the main reasons people go through depression especially is because lack of positive reinforcement in their life. What that essentially means is that people don't have they don't hear much praises, they don't hear compliments, right? So the good place to start is starting to do it on your own. Okay, start be more praiseworthy and kinder, gentle with yourself more. It's not just clinically proven or scientifically proven. You will actually start to feel better if you have tried it or practiced it. Okay, so give it a shot. So yeah, I know, Kat. Yeah, I mean, I feel like I was doing that for quite a bit uh, as well. I mean, the thing is, this is one of the things. I think that part of the bouncing back and forth is part of your learning as well. I think it's part of what makes you feel more empowered. Then okay, these are the things. Because not everything, even what I say, will work for everybody. It will work for some, but we all had this mix that will help us the most. So I'm kind of sharing with you some of the things that was quite helpful for me after trying so many different things. But I would say just for me, I can what I learned from my experience is that bouncing from different ones to different ones is part of the process of relearning and healing. And it's not just there only to just heal emotionally, but also make us more wiser. So we learn how to make bigger, better decisions over time. I know this might not be the answer you want, but it's the answer that I've come across in life. Is there are a lot of things to bounce off, a lot of tools and techniques, but sometimes experimenting with them and see which one works for us the best is the best way, I feel. But for me, self-compassion and reducing self-criticism have been helpful for me and my clients a lot. Usually, this is what we first couple of sessions I usually focus on. The importance of self-compassion. And some people even tell me, "Oh, that's so That's so silly, or that's so lame. I was like, hey, it could be lame, but it is scientifically proven to make you feel better. And if you have anxiety and other issues, it can help. Try out, and it might be helpful for you. So I get it. It sometimes is um, too dreamy and things like that, but it's self compassion is definitely helpful. Okay. Yes, Jerome, I will put the slides on our meetup group itself as a comment on that. Okay, once we're done. Yeah, I know, Kat. I know, Kat. Tell me about it. I think our society is not used to complimenting each other necessarily, right? It's that one self compassion is one of those things. It's something like you have to learn how to do it on your own if you haven't had reinforcing guides or authorities around you. I wish I can give you a better answer, but it is something to remember and practice more intently if you don't have people who are compassionate around you, right? And if you're not being reinforced for it either. But it is something that it can be very useful. Okay. Thank you for sharing that, though, Kat. So let me see if there's any questions. Are there any things? Why don't we actually take there's a few more slides left. So why don't we take about another break till about 5:10, about 5 minute break till about 5:10, right? And then we'll come back and we'll cover the next few slides that we have. So it's 5:04 from my side here, from Eastern side. So why don't we back in about another 5 minutes, about 5:10, and then we'll continue our conversation. Okay. All right. See everybody. Hello, everybody. Welcome. I'm just kind of going through some of the text here, seeing if there's anything that's needs addressing. Yeah, I think one of the things we'll do is because usually, I mean, I was running these sessions quite a bit before, but when my university semester started, I started to kind of put a pause on them. But I'm trying to see, if we can have something at least weekly going on. But I know there is a usually every week might be, I could be able to do it, but I had to kind of take a look. So I know a few of them are also interested in kind of continuing these conversations after. So let me think about what we can do, and then I'll keep you posted on our meetup group there. See if we can have maybe a weekly session thing, or maybe even like a Facebook group or something for those who want to stay connected and continue the conversations. Okay. Yeah, that's okay. Thank you for joining us, Jonas. So we'll see you soon. Another session. Okay, great. All right. So why don't we continue? So I'm gonna see, and yeah. So what we'll do is in the second section. So we're part of the still in the second step, right? So understanding this is one of the main things that I over the years that I didn't even see the importance of it actually until I started to provide counseling for people themselves. Is the understanding being able to express your emotions, and what we have done is, what I've seen over the years is that emotions are essentially are the language of our inner self. So when we suppress our emotions, when we don't listen to them, we don't give a room for it to be expressed or understood, we are actually piling up these energy, what I call energy in motion or emotion, we're piling it up. So when it gets piled up more and more and more, it comes and manifests as different symptoms of anxiety and different issues. But obviously anxiety as being a primary one of them, right? So a key thing in order for it to come to the point of anxiety, there are things that we can do, especially having a space for your emotions to be expressed. Again, I'm not saying this is just I write it down and make it easy here, but the thing is, I know it's not the easiest thing right away in the beginning to do, because learning how some of those emotions might be stored into your nervous systems in your body, in your subconscious mind, or maybe it's not easy to articulate that. But the key thing to what I want to motivate you to think about is be able to express your emotion to somebody who you trust, either counselor or therapist or whoever it may be, or on your journal, or utilize some sort of a expression like maybe art or drawing or music, that you can express your emotions, because adding up too much emotions in your mind can create anxiety issues later on. And again, this is something that many people unfortunately uh, miss, because they don't see that their emotions and their anxiety have relationship, but they do. And it's important to understand and treat emotion as messengers. Okay. So when emotions can essentially become suppressed or repressed, right? So suppress is you're trying to actually purposefully bury certain emotions that doesn't feel good, right? Sadness, anger, it can be any of those, or repressing them or keeping it repressed through distraction, right? That can happen as well, where once you repress that, you can engage in certain activities like drinking or whatever, that you're hoping it will not come out, right? Sometimes what happens when you do drinking or drugs, it just naturally everything comes out because your conscious mind is not as working normally as it should. So it comes all together at once. So being able to slowly and gradually express, hey, I feel this way today, I feel this other way, this happened to me before, they can really actually, just you trying to do that can really help, right? Especially in the early stages when you're dealing with how to deal with your emotions and anxiety, right? So so challenges they may cause, if you keep it repressed, right? Emotional exhaustion, anxiety, burnout, and depression. And remember that there's no negative or positive emotions. They're signals, right? So when you get the signals, is it's up to us to answer to that signal, not necessarily classify it. So all emotions are valid and important. It's us to know what, become more wiser about how do we deal with them and use them. Okay. So let's see any messages. So Kat is giving a really good point. Let's see. One of the therapy that I was thinking of, the highway sitting, go without interaction, they just keep driving. I'm like water, just flow over, pass around it. Yeah, that's a really good one. That's great. Keep sharing ideas, Kat. That's fantastic. Um, Yeah, so let's see again, slowing down my mucks up meditation. Yeah, so this is the thing. You need to see which one, you know, works the best after trying things out, right? So these are some of the practices, that can be useful for you. Try it out. So let's see. Next slide. I have essentially kind of how do you actually do this practice of how to expressing your emotion, right? Because that's why many people say like I don't even know how to express my emotion. It's actually as simple. You will see that even if you just Google emotions wheel, you will get something like that. Again, each one of them will be different to one another, but the idea is to, to the best of your ability to identify the emotion that you're experiencing. The fact that you can just identify emotion that you're going through, it's actually itself have a therapeutic effect, because now you're working with your what is known as the prefrontal cortex, right? Which is responsible for thinking.
Because then you can practice. So when you have guests over, you can say,
Sorry,
"Well,
I
I
think
won't." Let's try.
I can hear you in the background.
I didn't do that. I say, well, they're already.
I do.
Yeah, sorry. Um, so yeah, so essentially being able to identify it, just identify, hey, I'm actually experiencing sadness, improves it has a therapeutic effect on its own. So first, that's the first step. Second step is essentially understanding, understanding why are you going through this, taking your best effort. Why do you feel this emotion right now? That's the second most important thing you can do. And the other key thing is here, the second bullet point here is that can I be compassionate while I'm expressing my emotions and what I'm going through? This is very important because we talked about many times before, that sometimes compassion was missing in life. So even our emotions got buried into our subconscious or to our nervous system, is because it was not expressed and it wasn't reinforced to be expressed, right? It's not because were allowed to express how we truly feel about something. So in order to retrain your mind, your body, to your subconscious mind, especially to express emotion without holding, that you need to create the precedence that you're being compassionate. You're being compassionate with your emotions, you're compassionate with your events and the situations and the challenges you've gone through, right? So it's the same thing what a therapist would do, is that they would show you how to be compassionate towards your emotions, to your own way of judging or thinking about things, and then eventually work towards, having emotions that are more useful and patterns that are more useful, right? But first step, like I said, understanding and expressing your emotions is a very important factor that many people who go through emotional challenges don't prioritize. So again, I didn't think this was important, but until I started to express myself freely, I started to see the importance of it and value of it. Okay, so, and then see if there's any specific needs behind it, what you need to do in order to feel better, and then essentially see, even sometimes creating that distance to kind of have that insight might be useful, right? So use your journal when you need to express yourself, express your emotions best of your ability. But even voice recorder would work as well if that's difficult for you. Okay, so that's something to keep an eye on. Let me see. Perfect. Okay. So the next aspect to understand is the nervous system, because understanding the nervous system and the relationship it has with anxiety can help you actually deal with the issues that are caused by anxiety onto your nervous system. So many, some of you may know this already or may not. That's okay. But there's two aspects to your nervous system, right? essentially the system that runs your body, your digestion, your heartbeat, blood pressure, everything, right? So nervous system is essentially, autonomic nervous system is what's essentially responsible for this. But depending on the type of situations you are in, whether you're in an anxiety provoking situation or fearful situation or not, different two other different type of systems to get activated, right? So when you're in a stressful period in your life, usually it's a sympathetic nervous system that is get activated, which is what in that mode you're essentially in the survival mode or threat detection mode, right? So when you're in that state, your heart rate is usually increased. You feel more trembling. You feel more blood pressure, right? And you also overreact. You might be overreacting during burnout, right? Or even during anxiety, right? So that's when your sympathetic system is in overdrive, right? Which is known as the gas pedal. But the parasympathetic nervous system, right, which is the opposite, which is essentially calming and recovery system. It conserves energy for healing, for repair, and activities such as meditation, yoga, breath work, and also deep sleep can really be helpful. What happens during anxiety is actually your sympathetic nervous system tends to stay overactivated. It stays on for too long without being able to putting your nervous system into parasympathetic nervous system. So this is why when your body stays in the sympathetic nervous system too long, you run into issues like burnout, or just feeling angry all the time, you blanking out or brain fog, right? So it's been in that sympathetic nervous system for too long. So being able to switch that to do something more calming becomes more important as learning how to reframe your mind or being able to express your thinking. So some of the things that you can do to calm your nervous system. So these are some of the things that can be quite useful if you haven't practiced them before. The 6-7-8 breathing, right? So if you're especially going through some sort of a presentation or a situation that you have a lot of stress or anxiety, you can practice the 4-7-8 breathing system, which is essentially to inhale for 4 seconds, hold it for 7 seconds, and exhale for 8 seconds. What it does is activate something known as the vagus nerve, which is actually in return activates your parasympathetic systems, helping you be more calmer and think more clearly, right? So essentially, that's one of the main things. So if you want to know about this system more, just type. It could be some of them sometimes called 4-6-8, but just type box breathing techniques. So what it does is that it will keep you in more parasympathetic, more calmer states of mind more longer, right? Especially when you understand this is what's happening. Remember we talk about the amygdala hijacking? So one of the times I had where a client, she was experiencing, blanking out and anxiety attacks during presentation. So when she knew it was amygdala hijacking, and then she started this breathing technique, it really helped her, right? So that's something you can try during anxiety provoked events. And also cold exposure and sauna. So cold splashes or cold showers can be quite useful to calm your nervous system. Sometimes it can improve temporarily. It can increase it, but over time, it activates the vagus nerve, and then it will start calming down your nervous system as well. And then sauna can be quite helpful for if you have the opportunity or the capability to access one, quite helpful as well. And from my experience, I found Om meditations, especially I've tested out with YouTube. Usually Om meditation or chanting or mantra meditation or humming can be quite useful because again, it vibrates what is known as the vagus nerve, which is essentially releases your tension and in the diaphragm, which helps you to calm down your body a lot more and effectively as well. Okay, so something for you to, again, you don't have to try all of them. You need to, I always say, let your excitement lets your interest guide your direction and let be the compass. So see which one is talking to you. Hey, I got to do more of that. And that's how I kind of went through all these things. Different times I tried different things, and then the ones that I was quite useful, I kept it. And but over the years, these are some of the things that have been quite useful for me. And also aerobic activities, dance, yoga, low intensity activities can calm down the nervous system as well. The thing is, if you lift to heavy weights and do extra strenuous activities, it can increase your heart rate and therefore put you in back into the sympathetic nervous system. But so you can essentially get there, but as long as you have a practice of low intensity, a regular practice of low intensity, so to calm down overall your nervous systems when you're dealing with anxiety. Okay. And obviously people know the importance of value of sleep, right? Usually parasympathetic nervous system dominates, right, during your REM sleep, when you're in your deep sleep. So getting proper sleep is very valuable, very useful for healing from anxiety and even in burnout, right? So make sure that you get the right sleep. You probably have heard it millions of times, but it is for actually to activate your parasympathetic nervous system that can help you stay calm. Okay, so that's important to know. I was going to see if there's any other questions. And you'll see that when you practice these things, especially things like the what do you call it? The reframing technique. We've got to go back here quickly. You'll see that like some of them actually now, when they start to understand these things about negative thinking and self-compassion, they started to experience this point where their mind is more blank, they don't have as much things that's going on that they're worrying about. And that it can feel uncomfortable for some people have told me about that. So understand it is actually temporary. It just your mind might not be used to being blank. So it started to think about anything, right? But it is something that will happen where you feel more blanked out, or you don't have much quietness in the mind. Again, it's part of the normal process of you learning to train your mind in the right direction. So if it's happening to you, it's normal. It usually over time, if you're doing the right activities, it will be filled with more positive and useful types of thinking. Okay. So I have these light slides just to kind of as a reminder to which habits to develop, right? So because I wanted to share with you in terms of some of the things that can develop more readily, more quickly, right? Because one of the main things I would say is like remembering these 5 things, the T-Bear model, right? It can actually help you discern or figure out what type of thinking, what type of beliefs, what type of emotions that can be serving me the most, or even help you start asking the question, what type of belief system are not useful for me anymore, right? So that's at the beliefs is the same with your thoughts, right? So understanding this model can go very far in terms of figuring out what thought system is affecting you and which one is not, can be the most useful for you. Okay. And the other aspect again is develop self-compassionate, should be a self-compassionate inner talk, right? Being kind to yourself, being more being forgiving with the mistakes you may have done in the past, not talking to yourself harshly or including others can go really far on reducing your anxiety symptoms, anxiety that you feel. Okay. And then also I put this aspect where avoidance, like we talked about before, is that some people, when they're going through stressful periods in life or when they're going through anxiety, they tend to avoid important tasks. But what happens is that when you avoid important tasks, you get more anxiety later, and that's not useful, right? So it's important to understand, hey, like, making a decision, because I used to avoid, after I, entered the corporate, certain things I avoided. And then I realized when I'm getting back to doing things, I'm a lot more anxious. Why is that? Because of avoidance. So, make a decision not to avoid as much as you used to if you have been avoiding, and then keep the task in one place that you can do. So that's why I used to so I used to uh, simple to-do list task. I use an application called Todoist, right? So keep a simple to-do list. I will help you kind of identify which ones you need to do and whatnot. Okay, and let go of self-criticism. Many people think it's useful. It's not, right? So something to keep an eye on. It can affect especially your nervous system, especially when you engage in a lot of negative thinking about yourself. It can affect your nervous system. And keep your nervous system under control is essentially what we talked about on our previous slides. Different activities and importance of keeping your nervous system calmer can help you deal with much of the issues that comes with anxiety. Okay. And another big one is perfectionism. I know we didn't get into talk about too much about that, but perfectionism is something when we've been criticized when we were younger. When you're critical of yourself, sometimes we want to be perfect with everything we do. We want to be the perfect parent, perfect son, perfect husband, whatever, right? So we want to be that perfect person or do everything perfectly. And this unnecessarily put a lot of pressure on the subconscious mind. Now we need to get everything right. And then when you put pressure on the subconscious mind or on yourself, it comes sometimes as manifested as anxiety. So this is not always necessary. It's picking and choosing where do you have to actually, what is mission critical, what is actually needs getting done, and then again doing it rather than holding you against some of the things that you didn't do so well in the past, or being too perfectionistic of trying to get things done perfectly. Okay, this is a big one that I personally suffer from. I used to be very self-critical, perfectionist. I wouldn't publish something if it's not perfect. I would look over it, but I realized, like, look, I'm missing out on the ability or the opportunity to help somebody in some way, and even to just showcase what I want, what I have to share. So perfectionism is something that a lot of people go through, especially I would say self-criticism that is coming from our past. So something to pay attention to let go, and also let go of anger and resentment. Many people, unfortunately, are very angry with themselves, sometimes other people, and they have a resentment. Many people also don't know that having that anger towards yourself or others, it negatively impacts them. I didn't know. I thought I have the right to be angry. Why not? Like, they're not doing the right thing. But when I only looked into these things more deeply, I realized, hey, anger is making my body painful. It's giving this issue, that issue, increasing high blood pressure, all those things, increasing stress. I was like, well, why do I have to pay for somebody else's mistake by being angry? So it's a mental decision I made. Anger is no longer useful for me. Being resentful towards others is no longer useful for me. I'm not saying, hey, you need to now stop being angry with people or resentful. I mean, it's a good idea, but I would say look into these things more. Do a little bit of research. Okay, what are the effects of anger? What are the effects of perfectionism? What are the effects of self-criticism? Do a little bit of research on this and make up your own mind about these things, because it's easy for me to say, hey, let go of these things, but you have to see, okay, like, how is this going to help me, and what are even the reasons why am I experiencing anxiety or any other condition, right? For me, what I found that because I was doing these things that not knowingly how it was affecting me. And the same with my clients. A lot of my clients who come to me don't know how some of these things I'm telling to let go, when you're holding on to them, how it affects them, right? So that's something I wanted to share with you. So like I always say in my session, right? Keep what's useful and use what is beneficial to you. You don't need to remember everything I talked about here today, right? So pick and choose what are the most things that you're resonating with, things that you want to do more or do less, and then use the ones you have. You don't have to try to use all of them. I don't think it works well when you try to do all of it. Use the one that is most resonating with you. Okay, so I mean, these are essentially the 3 steps that I have. So 1, 2, 3 key daily habits is the last one I have. So I want to see if there's anyone has. Let me see if there's any other slides for you. No, that's it. So that's what I have for today. Let me know if there's any questions. Happy to answer. In the meantime, if anyone has any specific questions that we can work through or look through.